Overthinking isn't a sign of intelligence. In fact, it might be the main reason you feel exhausted, stuck, disconnected. Have you noticed how the mind never stops? It replays scenes, rehearses conversations, analyzes every tiny detail as if your life depended on it. But here's the twist. This endless stream of thoughts isn't helping you. It's holding you hostage. You think you're solving problems, but in reality, you're just recycling fears, trying to control the future with thoughts that couldn't even handle the present. Here's the truth. Overthinking doesn't bring clarity. It brings anxiety. It brings doubt. It brings insomnia. And the wildest part, we get used to it. We believe this constant mental noise is normal. But it's not. It's static, like trying to hear a beautiful song through a broken radio. What if I told you there's a way to live with less effort and more presence? It's not about erasing your thoughts or running from them. It's about realizing you don't have to believe everything you think. Today, we're going to explore what happens when you let go, when you stop trying to understand everything and start actually feeling, living in the now, unfiltered, slow, real. If this already resonates with something deep inside you, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. YouTube only shows content like this to people who show they care. Now, let this video guide you. No rush, no pressure, just listen. We grow up believing that the more we think, the more control we have. But what if that's the trap? What if the analytical mind, the one that calculates every outcome, rehearses every scenario, keeps you up at night, is actually what's keeping you stuck? Today, we're going to look directly at what's behind overthinking. And I'm not talking about breathing techniques or productivity hacks. I'm talking about the invisible structure that makes you think too much. And more importantly, how to break free from it. There's a pattern behind excessive thinking, a cycle. And like every cycle, it seems harmless at first, until you realize you're running in circles and calling it progress. It starts with something simple, a doubt, a decision, a problem. But instead of acting, you analyze, then analyze more, then again, until each thought becomes another problem. Each problem triggers a new doubt, and suddenly, your mind becomes a minefield. In the end, what should have been a simple decision turns into a mental prison. But there's a crack in that wall, and it's not a trick. It's a shift in perception. Something so simple and so forgotten that it feels radical today. Being inwardly silent. Silence, not as the absence of sound, but the absence of effort. A mental space where you don't need to explain anything, justify anything, or fight anything. You just are, fully present in the now. And that's where it begins. The thing no one teaches you in school. The art of living with clarity, without needing to figure everything out. So let me ask you this. How much of your life have you lost trying to solve what never needed fixing in the first place? Overthinking doesn't start as a problem. In fact, it feels like an advantage. You plan more. You anticipate risks. People even praise you. You're so detail-oriented. You think things through. You're so rational. But eventually, thinking stops being analysis and becomes a cage. What happens when your mind turns into a battlefield where no decision feels safe, no path feels right, and every choice carries unbearable weight? You fall into a mental loop. And the trickiest part of that loop is this. It disguises itself as responsibility. You think you're being careful, but deep down, you're just afraid. Afraid to make a mistake, afraid to lose, afraid to regret. And fear. Thought fuels doubt. Doubt brings more fear, and the wheel keeps turning. There's a name for this. Overthinking. Thinking in excess. Thinking to the point where life itself feels too complicated to be lived. But here comes the uncomfortable truth. Overthinking doesn't solve. It delays. It amplifies. It disconnects. You think so much about the future that you forget to live the now. You analyze your feelings so much, you stop actually feeling. Your body is here, but your mind is elsewhere. Your heart wants to move, but your head says no, and slowly you stop trusting yourself. Now, take a moment and reflect. How many chances have you missed while waiting for certainty? How many conversations have you rehearsed endlessly but never actually had? How many sleepless nights have you spent arguing with your own thoughts and getting nowhere? That's the first wound of overthinking. Paralysis. You know what needs to be done, but you can't because you're trying to get it right mentally when it only gets resolved in action. And here comes the first solution. It's not comfortable, but it's simple. Action without clarity is better than analysis without movement. Sounds wrong, doesn't it? After all, we've been told since childhood, think before you act. But no one warned us that overthinking is just as destructive as impulsivity. You don't need another perfect plan. You need just enough clarity to act. Let me give you a real example. You've been meaning to have a difficult conversation. Your mind says, what if they react badly? What if I regret it? What if I make things worse? Your brain wants to simulate every possible scenario. But here's the truth. You'll only know what happens after you do it. Action brings clarity. Movement reveals the path. Reality responds better to presence than to speculation. Thinking is valuable, but overthinking is wrong. And resistance has a cost, exhaustion. No wonder you feel tired. Even if you haven't done anything physical, your brain, when caught in a loop, burns energy like a car stuck in first gear. The result? You feel behind all the time, always late, always overwhelmed. And even when you finish something, there's another storm of thoughts waiting. It's like trying to empty a bucket with holes in it. This is the second big issue with overthinking. The never-ending feeling of not being enough. You never feel like you've done enough. You never feel ready, and you start to doubt your own ability. But here's the key insight. Overthinking isn't a sign of intelligence. It's a sign of fear without direction. It's fear wearing the mask of logic. Anxiety dressed up as caution. And to escape this loop, you don't need more thoughts. You need a different state of mind. That state is called presence, but not the polished version found in media. Not the feel-good, ambient music kind. Something more raw, more honest, more human. It's facing what you feel without trying to explain it. It's watching your thoughts without becoming them. It's realizing you're not your thoughts. You're the awareness behind them. And that shifts everything. Because right now, if you stop and just observe what's happening in your mind, you'll notice almost every thought is not in the present. They're about what should have been or what might happen, but rarely about what is. And what is? You. Breathing, listening to these words, in a real place, with a real body, in a real moment. That's the doorway. It starts with awareness of now, not as a spiritual concept, but as a concrete starting point. From here, we go deeper. Now that you've seen how overthinking creates paralysis, let's talk about the next layer. Overthinking doesn't just stop action. It hijacks your ID. At some point, it stops being something you do and becomes who you are. You say things like, I'm just an overthinker. It's how my brain works. I can't help it. And slowly, you build a self-image around it. You start to trust your thoughts more than your instincts. You hesitate to make decisions unless they're 100% safe. You trade your spontaneity for simulated control. But here's the thing. Thoughts aren't facts. They're mental events, like weather patterns passing through your mind. Some are helpful, some are noise. And if you mistake them for reality, you start to live inside a simulation. You start living in mental projections of life, rather than life itself. Let's break this with a metaphor. Imagine your brain is like a camera. It can zoom in, zoom out, adjust focus. But overthinking is like getting stuck in zoom mode. You're so focused on a tiny detail that you lose the full picture. You zoom in on You zoom in on what people might think. You zoom in on a sentence someone said and replay it 100 times. Meanwhile, life is moving. Opportunities are passing, and you're missing it. Not because you don't care, but because you're busy fighting ghosts in your mind. So what's the solution? You have to train your mind to zoom out, and this starts with a mental shift. Stop seeking certainty. Start cultivating capacity. Overthinkers want certainty before acting, but the truth is, you don't need certainty to begin. You need resilience to adapt. Life doesn't reward the one who over-prepares. It rewards the one who shows up and adjusts on the go. And this leads to the third hidden cost of overthinking: disconnection from intuition. You stop hearing your gut. You second-guess every feeling. You get so used to running simulations in your mind that you forget how to feel something real and act on it. But intuition isn't mag. It's pattern recognition filtered through emotion. It's your body telling you what your mind can't calculate in time. And if you numb your intuition, you lose your compass. So how do you reconnect? You stop obsessing over the perfect answer and start feeling your way into the next step. Not the whole plan, just the next step. Want something real you can do today? Here's a practice. The next time you catch yourself looping, pause. Don't argue with the thought, just label it thinking. That's it. No judgment, no trying to stop it, just thinking. This one small move breaks the trance. It puts a space between you and the thought. And in that space is freedom. Freedom to choose what comes next, not react. Choose. Another shift. Start, because here's the deeper truth. Overthinking is just a symptom. The root problem is lack of self-trust. You don't trust your ability to handle what happens if you get it wrong. So you try to get it perfect in your head. But perfection is a myth. And your mind, brilliant as it is, can't predict every outcome. You need to feel safe in movement, not in mental rehearsal. And that safety comes from practice, from letting life teach you through doing, not just thinking. So here's a reframe to carry with you. What if you stopped trying to control the future and focused on your response to the present? Because you don't need control. You need clarity. You don't need certainty. You need presence. And presence only exists when the mind is quiet enough to listen. Here's the irony. The less you try to figure everything out, the more things begin to make sense. Because in silence, life speaks. In stillness, the next step And when you finally stop overthinking, you don't lose control. You find peace. Not the kind that comes from having no problems, but the kind that comes from not needing all the answers to feel alive. And maybe now, for the first time in a long while, your mind is quiet, not silent, but clear, because the goal was never to shut down your thoughts. It was to remember that you are not them. You are not your doubts, not your loops, not your inner voice that always needs a conclusion. You're the space behind it, the one who sees. But here's something no one tells you, and it's the final reset for today. Just because you've had this clarity now, doesn't mean the loops won't come back. They will, because they've been there for years, conditioned, automated, familiar. But the next time they show up, you won't get dragged. You'll notice, you'll breathe, you'll choose, and that is freedom. You've just opened a new do, another question waiting to be asked, another illusion ready to fall. Let yourself follow that thread, because the more aware you become, the less you'll need to be certain, and the more alive you'll feel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.